On behalf of the Consortium of Endowed Episcopal Parishes, I'd like to welcome everyone to this webinar about technology. It's a continuation of our COVID webinars related to technology and the other things that are facing church administrators at this time. Just a little bit of background on that subject before I introduce our speakers and turn things over to Tom. This conversation came out of the administrator conversations that happened throughout the year and lead into our pre-conference administrator conversations. And I'm sure this will be a subject, technology in times of COVID and beyond, for those conversations. That conference is next month, and we hope that you'll join us for it. My name is Zach Beal. I'm Director of Operations and Strategic Partnerships for St. Andrew's Episcopal Church here in Kansas City, Missouri. I brought this forward as a webinar for us to discuss with SEEP because we had a couple of things happen this year. In addition to COVID making all of our work happen off-site, we did have a critical hack that took our technology down as well. And so the folks that I brought to the webinar today are the people that helped us get things going again, and our technology, I'm happy to say, is in a better place than it probably ever has been before. We're able to collaborate and use some tools that are just making our work better, and I'm excited to share that information with you. Just a quick note, we are going to be speaking in the Microsoft language because that happens to be the tool bank that we use here at St. Andrews, but I think all of the things that we're sharing today would be equally applicable if you use a different package of tools, whether that be Google or something unique to your church environment. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Tom, and he's going to introduce everybody that's on the call with us today. Tom, take it away.
Well, hello, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Joe Swimmer and Zachary Beal and the entire SEEP network for having us back. We're really glad to be here, and we appreciate this opportunity to share. We hope each of you walk away with 2 or 3 solid points that you can explore to improve the efficiency in your own technical environment and workflows. Moonshot Innovations is a technical services firm that offers organizations across the country tactical and strategic help with IT needs. We're fortunate to help other religious institutions with their infrastructure and security, as well as business intelligence to support new membership, attendance, giving trends, and even some of those forecasts. So I say that because we're a little bit in tune with some of the interests and the priorities that I think each of you have there. The best part is, well, we educate clients and show how to save money through proper configuration of current infrastructure tools to reduce those third-party products. I mean, if you don't have to spend money for them, why should you? If you've already got that functionality in the tools that you already possess, that's really where it starts. Then watching them save money and reallocate those funds to other needs. We'll cover a lot today, so if needed, there will be further information after the webinar from Zach or Joe, but also at 321moonshot.com if you'd just like to browse on your own. But we'll leave it at that. With that, I'll turn it over to Josh and Earl. Josh is our leading security expert. He manages that entire team at Moonshot. Earl is in charge of the entire cloud services division there. But with that, I'll turn it over to them. Once again, I want to thank every one of you for having us. We're glad to be here, and hope you enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. My name's Josh Woods. As Tom said, I'm the manager of the M365 team here at Moonshot and also the security and identity architect. One of the things that we discussed on the last session that we held was, just making use of those tools that you have and getting the best and most possible out of that tool set. And we here at Moonshot, we are direct partners with Microsoft, in the security space from all of the cloud services. But with this panel here, we wanted to just express, across whatever tool you're using, what to think about, things to think about, how to prepare for the future, how to prepare, as Zach said, for unexpected attacks, or allow your people to work wherever they choose to, wherever they need to, and be secure and have access to everything, no matter where they work. So I'm going to bring up the slide deck that we prepared for this. Give me just a sec. I have to find the screen that it's on.
While Josh is pulling that up, I just want to remind everyone that we do have the chat on the right-hand side if you've joined us live, and we would be happy to field any questions that you might have as things go on. We might be able to address those there towards the end or reach out to you afterwards. And another reminder, we're going to cover a lot of information, so if you want to review this, it will be available on the SEEP YouTube page and the SEEP website.
And again, guys, the more questions you ask, the better off, this is going to be for everyone, and the more everybody's going to learn. So please ask questions in the chat. We will try and answer them as quickly as possible. We'll take breaks throughout this slide deck, but some of you who joined us on the last session will recognize some of the slides, but we've added quite a few with all the work that we've done out at St. Andrews and things to highlight for everyone in the network. So again, technology should create efficiencies, control costs, and protect assets always. That's one of our core beliefs here at Moonshot, and something we strive to assist all of our clients and everybody that we work with. This is basically session 2, create efficiencies and control cost. Again, it's Earl, myself, and Tom from the Moonshot side, along with Joe and Zach from the SEEP network. Business goals, security, tools you already have, build a consumable IT roadmap, and set milestones. Again, we covered that last session, but it's always, those are the things you want to keep on top of mind. It is that consistent set of utilizing what you have available and utilizing the best technology that's going to function for what you guys are using, how you use it, and how you communicate between each other, not only in your own entities, but along with the entire network. Third-party apps and platform apps, it's always best to always keep a running list of what you are utilizing in your environment from a third-party perspective outside of what your main technology covers, whether that be Microsoft, whether that be Google, or any other function for your main communication platforms. Most everyone has those third-party apps that they utilize, and not a lot of people know that the tools, their main tools that they're using, can cover some of those third-party functions with a little setup and a little help from, whether it be a partner like Moonshot or another partner in your area. That's one of the areas where us as a partner can come in and help you guys set that up, get it running and functioning, in your environment, and save you money in the end by removing any unnecessary costs. And Zach, I know you can speak to that personally from what we've done over there at St. Andrews, with especially a lot of the on-premise hardware. When you think about it, we over there at St. Andrews migrated all of the on-premise file shares out to SharePoint and saved them the need from having to utilize that on-premise hardware, and in ultimately cutting off the VPN access necessary to gain access into that internal hardware. Now that it's hosted out on SharePoint, whenever you have an internet connection, you can access it. No need for VPN. It keeps it much more secure, less points of entry for an attacker to come in. And Zach, honestly, when you think back on it, was there a reason you didn't move previously, or was it just not something you were aware of or had looked into when you look back on it?
Yeah, I think there are a couple factors at play. I think COVID has been a catalyst for making a lot of changes that you might have always had in the back of your mind, especially from a technology standpoint, just because they were necessitated by the realities of things. But I think there's an intimidation factor that comes with any of these technology things, especially if you're the point person like I am as the administrator here for transitioning things like that. I don't have the expertise that would be necessary to do that confidently. And that's where it's been really great. I think one of the things we're going to touch on is how to find someone who can help you do this, and somebody who can take some of the heat if it might not be the easiest transition in the world. And certainly a transition as big as this comes with some training and some setting expectations with staff. But having a technology partner, finding the right one, has been very important for our process of going down the road of some of these changes.
Correct. And you know, a lot of times we try and do as much as we can, you know, ourselves, but there are those times when bringing in a technology partner will greatly advance your technology and get you guys to that point where you're operating that you may not have even had an idea that you were capable of, or that your tools were capable of. So it's always something to keep in mind to reach out, you know, have somebody just come in and investigate, you know, discover what you guys have going on in your environments and how you can better your stance with the technology that you're using. You know,
hey, Josh.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that, you know, as you're seeking a partner that you trust, I would encourage you all to do your research and talk to a few. What you're really looking for and some of the key things that you're going to look for in a partner of that nature is someone who's going to educate you, someone who's going to feed you, someone who has the depth to go into the details of these technologies. It's very easy to find a partner that can, you know, let's say set you up, but do they really know how to dig deep into the weeds on these products? And so if you're qualifying a potential partner, that's probably a really good place to start.
I would agree. You know, don't take your time, you know, read reviews on these, you know, technology partners that you look out for assistance from, and talk to a couple, you know, if that's the case, talk to a couple, get a feel for it, because you're definitely going to find those ones that pay attention to what's going on in your business and really are looking out for your best interest. We all know there's going to be those ones that just come in and try and look for that quick buck or the in and out, but there are a lot of those out there like us here at Moonshot that we want to build a lasting partnership. We want to build, you know, a relationship with our clients that we help them as much as we would help ourselves, you know, in the environment and with the tools that we're using. That's what we strive for here at Moonshot and what we pride ourselves on as well. Right sizing, you know, your technology on this slide here. Again, it points back to what you guys are doing within your organizations, how you're utilizing the tools that you have, and making sure that you have the proper licensing for what you're trying to do. Like Microsoft, for instance, there are multiple different levels of licensing, and it all depends on what you're trying to accomplish, which license you choose. And so having a technology partner come in that understands that licensing can help you get to where you need to be without spending more than what you need, or without getting more technology areas that are necessary in your environment. When we move to the architecture section, that points back again to St. Andrews and what we've done out there with Zach. And that organization is, we are removing the need for any of that on-premise equipment and any of that on-premise VPN access. So that way we reduce the footprint for, you know, attack surface, and allow, again, access from anywhere in the world. As long as you have an internet connection, you know, we are going to allow that by moving from an on-premise stance to the cloud. Workflow tools, when we get into that, there are certain tools available all over the place, third party, Microsoft, Google, that can help in your business processes. And that's one of the things that we do very well, is we come in and do a discovery right off the bat. We look over how you guys are operating, what your organizational processes are, how you guys are utilizing that data, how you're accessing that data. And we look for ways to help improve and make your day-to-day more efficient with different tools that are available from what you're using. And security. Security is right now more important than I would say, any other topic in the environment, especially with all the areas that have been exposed for hackers to or attackers to come in and take advantage of. So security from not only a data perspective, but identity and device perspective is a hugely important factor right now in making decisions and how you utilize your technology. Zach, I see we have a couple of questions popping up. Is there anything we'd like to talk to before I move on to the next slide?
We did have a question regarding what is a VPN, and I've done the best I can to try to address that. But a VPN is a virtual private network, and in our old system, it was the way that staff members could get to the files that would only normally be accessible if you were on campus. But that comes with some security vulnerabilities. I don't know if you want to go into any of that, but having the on-premises server and some VPN tunnels may have been what was at the root of are getting hacked here in Kansas City. So definitely a consideration if you have people accessing things off-site using a licensed program like G Suite, or in our case, Microsoft, is a better, more secure, more reliable way to go about things. It's not affected by power or the network going down or anything like that. And the cool thing, just to piggyback, I know that Josh is going to get to this in the next slide, but you may already be paying for these features with your email and Microsoft licenses. So, and the next slide does have some really good news about pricing related to that. If you're not already getting nonprofit pricing, there are special rates available for churches.
So as we dig into this next slide, that is the first bullet point within here, is that Microsoft and most of the other third-party technologies have nonprofit pricing. And I know a lot of you fall into that category if you're not already set up. I know Zach and I had talked about this earlier. There are ways to get you to that point where you can access that nonprofit pricing and utilize it in your environments. And one of the biggest examples I can give you is when we swapped licenses within the St. Andrews tenant. We went from the O365 standard license to a business premium license, which retail, it's $20 a piece. And Zach, I believe we nonprofit were $5 a piece for those licenses.
Yeah, that's right. So just to be clear, that cost is a cost per user. So every staff member here at the church had a $2 to $5 license for their email account that brought them into the Microsoft platform. So that's Microsoft Word, Outlook, Excel, all of those things. But then on top of that, Microsoft has given a pretty good field of other products, which may make some of your other software choices redundant. So they have Microsoft Teams, which is a good substitute in some cases for Zoom, for instance. And there are about 1 million examples of that. But this is something that I really wasn't aware of until I started having conversations with technology partners. Moonshot was one of those that really brought it to my attention. But you know, if you do your research and talk to a number of different people, you may find that you can actually save money by making this transition, which is pretty neat.
That's correct. And that's one of the biggest things we find with all our clients is they just don't understand what's included in all these bundles and the cost savings that are available to them when they move to one of these bundles. And security is a huge portion of that. With the license that we moved to in St. Andrew's case, it opened up the door for entry-level security options from the Microsoft Stack that will allow the removal of some of those third-party costs that St. Andrews is paying to other providers, to third-party providers. So there is just a lot of options to look at all across the board, whether it's Microsoft Stack or any other tool that you're using. Most likely they have a bundled option to add security into those license sets. Another big thing to think about is if you are paying for any telephony services outside of your main bundle of tools, that's one thing that's included inside a lot of these Microsoft bundles through Teams. And they have made leaps and bounds over the past few years with the Teams telephony system, and the cost is really minimal compared to what a third-party provider would charge. And it adds into this stance of, you'll hear me say, single pane of glass. The more you can manage from one pane of glass, the better off you're going to be, and the easier it's going to be for you guys to manage that in your organization. And file storage. Again, I'm hitting on these topics because it's top of mind with St. Andrews, and that was one of the biggest issues they had, was file storage, making it accessible for everyone, no matter where they were, and keeping backups and things of that nature for them to access and recover from if anything were to ever happen again.
And I think we're going to talk about this soon, but some of the information on that slide is probably a little bit overwhelming from an administrator perspective, as we think about, I'm just trying to figure out how to get people access to the files that they're using today. So just to say it out loud, I can totally respect that, because we're in the midst of that file storage solution that Moonshot is helping us with. But on the roadmap, I definitely think that we'll be looking at more of the telephony options to replace our traditional landline system. And security is always at the forefront of our mind since we had the hack. So these are things that you wouldn't necessarily be taking on right away, but your technology partner can help you to develop a roadmap for how you address each of these things as time goes on.
That's correct. And this slide that we're getting into now is touching on that workflow efficiency. And that's one of the things that during our engagement with St. Andrews, we've highlighted quite a few things that can be benefited from the technology that we're implementing out there, and add on to more efficiencies in their environment to make them communicate and run that church in a better business fashion, all the way from collaboration, automation, file share, chat, voice and video communications, and mobile access from any device, and keeping that environment secure the whole way through. No matter what you're using, what you're doing, security should always be at the forefront. And I will go through these real quick, as you guys, we went over these on the last, but these are just a set of what comes with the M365 suite when you move to an M license bundle. O365, EMS, Windows, those are the top three, or those are the three sections within Microsoft 365, the stack. And these just bullet point some of the things within those technologies of the M365 stack. And then we get in here into SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive, and what can be done with SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive, file storage and sharing, and workflow automation again. Just some overview of what's included in those and what they're capable of. This one I wrote in here especially for this session that we're doing now, and why St. Andrews reached out to us in the first place was because of things that they had experienced, and it all stems from security. Security should never be an afterthought. Security should be the baseline which every business function is based from, and I wrote that. I have been in the security space. I'm the crazy guy here at Moonshot that always worries about everybody's security. And you do not want to implement any technology without first making sure that it's going to be secure. And in most cases, any attack or anything that happens is a direct result of just not being prepared for it. So preparing and making sure that your environment is secure is the first and foremost item you guys should always take into account. The M365 and Azure, because Azure is the backplane for all Microsoft services now in the cloud. What they offer is integrated tooling, identity and device level security. It's all AI based. It's always learning. Microsoft learns from not only all the enterprise customers that they have, but they also, with all Hotmail and Outlook and everything that's out there, they're constantly learning from any attack or any threat that's found in their entire ecosystem. And when they find things and are alerted of issues or attacks or email threats that are going out, it doesn't matter where they find it from, they immediately address it. They find a resolution and they pass that resolution out to all of their clients, all of their free end users, all the way to their enterprise level businesses. Because it is AI based and it's all automated, it happens, the response is minimal compared to when you're using a bunch of different third-party tools all together. It may take every third-party provider a different amount of time to get that attack taken care of, resolved, and that resolution out to all of their customers. Microsoft is one of the best, from a Gartner perspective. Gartner does reviews on all businesses and everything going on with all these toolings that we use, whether it be Microsoft or Google or anything. Gartner always takes a look in, and Microsoft, I believe, is number 2 on the list right now for security and how well they do in keeping their customers protected. And it is all driven by the Microsoft cloud. It's all based off everything that's out there, the infrastructure, and their learning and investigations from that cloud environment.
And just to say this out loud, if you're looking at that list of things and feeling that you don't necessarily understand it, you're not alone, because I don't know what most of those things mean. But what I take it to understand is that it means that an administrator has less downtime for IT related issues, which is really important for churches. It seems like the worst IT nightmares happen right before a big event or something important. And then the other thing is, your partner, your technology partner, or whoever you're working with to do these things will help you to set policies that make sense. And it really is kind of a set it and forget it situation with these tools. It's, you're setting update policies for computers and making sure that security vulnerabilities are patched and updated in a timely fashion. And then you can kind of take for granted, unlike some of the tools that we've used historically, that it will do what it's supposed to do. Actually, the vulnerability at St. Andrews happened because of the IT management software that we no longer use. And so Microsoft is taking care of some of those things for us. So security, if you haven't already had a vulnerability or a hack, I hate to say it, but it's probably just a matter of time. So, don't be overwhelmed by AI or things like that. Just know that this really means that it's something that we just don't have to think about, because Microsoft is such an enterprise level product, and Google is probably the same way, that the administrators are no longer faced with having to solve all of the day-to-day issues.
And Zachary, you mentioned the term enterprise, and I think that's important to note here, because Josh, you just suggested that that Microsoft was number 2. I would gather to suspect that the number 1 would be a very enterprise specific solution that none of us could actually get access to begin with. And so what Microsoft has done is they brought that enterprise level service to the small business market. And that's what we've got in an integrated solution, just like Josh and Zach are describing here.
And to expand on what Zach was talking about even further is, that's one of the things we do for our partnerships, and what a technology partner should do is they should keep a pulse out on what's going on in the environment that you guys are utilizing, whether it be Microsoft or Google or whatever it is. They should be keeping up to date with the new releases of technology from them. And if there's something that they feel that you could benefit from, they should be having those discussions as those technologies are announced and those changes are announced, and work with you to implement or make the changes necessary to keep you guys protected at all times. Another thing, like Zach said, is we go out and put these policies and everything in place to keep you secure, but you have to keep those updated on a regular basis, whether it be every couple months you take a look at what's available and make sure your policies are configured correctly to monitor the threats and keep you protected at all surfaces, all attack surfaces. That's something that a good technology partner should keep you in tune with and up to date with, and make sure you guys are having those conversations with them on a regular basis on, are we good? Is there anything we need to be looking at for the future, or anything that was released that we need to make changes in our environment to better our security stance? So that is definitely one thing to keep in touch with your technology partner about, and make sure that they're communicating with you on a regular basis about those changes and new features coming out. Another big thing that needs to be thought about is disaster recovery. And disaster can be anything from power outages to a malicious attack of any kind, as St. Andrews went through with the ransomware attack. You always want to make sure that there's a plan in place no matter what happens in the environment, and that you guys have that plan to recover from it or keep your business up and running. And these are just a few bullet points to really think about when you're making those plans is, do we have those backups in place for all of our data, for everything in the environment, to where if we were attacked and somebody, was to go in and harvest our data and lock us out from it, could we access a backup? How long is that backup going to take? And that's that time to operational bullet point there is, how long are we going to be down before we can get our backups in place and everybody back to able to access that data and continue to function from a business perspective. And application functionality. A lot of people, those applications that you guys utilize depend on the data that can be attacked, depend on that data that can be, locked down or harvested. So that's another thing to keep in mind is if we do have to recover or we do have to move to a different solution, are those applications that we use in our day-to-day business going to be able to stay up and functional as well? So disaster recovery is definitely a major thing to think about when you're making your plans. And here it is in the ease of management. I was talking about that single pane of glass. The more tools you utilize, the more administration you're going to have to undertake in your environment. So when you think about using, G Suite or Microsoft or all your different surveillance, like in St. Andrews, they use Guardian, and then they have Kaseya. So there's multiple different, administration portals that they have to utilize throughout their management of their tenant. And the more you can get to a single pane of glass, the more you can reduce those different portals and administration, ways of administering these, the better off you're going to be, the easier it's going to be to keep a pulse on what you have going on in your environment. The on-prem hardware, that's another thing, a huge key piece to think about is if you do decide to go fully to the cloud and use the cloud services, no matter what you choose, you remove that necessity for any on-premise hardware. And when you think about it, not only are you removing the hardware, but you're removing the electricity cost or the cost of maintaining that hardware, replacing pieces and parts on it when it comes, time. Another huge piece to highlight at St. Andrews was their on-premise hardware that they were utilizing had a component that went bad, and Zach, you can attest to this. It was hard to secure that piece of hardware and have it actually installed and back up and running for you guys.
Yeah. So actually, yeah, just to say something about that, we had hypothetically all of the right pieces in the right places. What we didn't have is a strong partner to make sure that those systems were working properly. And so even though we had the pieces in the right places, they were from different vendors, and it wasn't like a turnkey solution where we could just bring our business back online after the hack. It disrupted continuity. And so, we're talking about a couple different things here, but really the overarching theme of this is, finding the right partners, which we're going to discuss here in a moment, and using those partners to simplify our lives as administrators to make sure that we have security and continuity of business if and when something happens. So we do have a question in the chat. How do you find someone like a Moonshot? And I want to make sure we address that. I'm not sure if that's coming up, but I'm just throwing that out here.
Tom, I'll let you speak to that one because we can address it right now. There's only a couple more slides to go. So go ahead, Tom.
So, we field calls from all over the country, and when they call in, it's interesting because often they are surprised at what their current providers aren't sharing with them. So just like we had talked about earlier, as you're talking to potential vendors, make sure that they're going to feed you. Make sure that they've they're going to feed you along the way, not just up front, but that's probably the most important step. They should be able to paint a picture to you on what's possible. And then they should work very, very closely with you so that you can coordinate and correspond your business goals with the technologies that are capable, that are available to you. From there, you work together to establish a roadmap and a sequence that's going to, accomplish those goals down the road. But most importantly, communicate with them when you're qualifying them. And I see the note here. Unfortunately, there's no Google search that would qualify a managed service provider. That might be a term to start with, but you just need to talk to them and make sure they're going to feed you, make sure they're going to help you understand, they're going to educate you, and then also make sure that they're going to work with you on a roadmap that's not only sequenced properly, but also in consumable portions. And that's something that we haven't talked about yet. But when I say consumable portions, that could be financial, right? But I promise you, many MSPs can move faster than their clients can. And so you don't want that MSP that's going to get into a big hurry and cram all of this stuff into your environment, and then your users are frustrated because then you start to lose adoption. And you want that support. You want everyone to be successful, and it takes a certain level of responsibility. It takes a high level of communication and a partner that understands what your goals are and what your capabilities are to establish what that consumable portion is. Again, by budget, and then also by what your users are able to consume at one point.
Yeah, I want to address that first portion of that question. How do you find a partner like this? Before we found Moonshot, that was a great question around St. Andrews, because we have worked with a couple companies that we don't necessarily recommend to our colleagues and friends. So how do you go about this? Quite honestly, it was searching for managed service providers on Google, on Yelp, on a couple of good resources to kind of think about is Microsoft has their licensed service providers. If you're a Microsoft person, Google probably has people that they have endorsed. So you may want to look on those sites for endorsements. But then another part of it is, we got the people on site, which is not necessarily the easiest thing to do in times of COVID, but having phone calls, are these people who are willing to invest time with you? Trust your gut. How do you feel about what they're saying to you? Is everything that they're saying going over your head, and in spite of asking questions, you're still not clear on what is really going on? That may not be the best partner for you. It's not to say that necessarily they're not a good technology provider. It's just that that's not going to be a good fit for your organization. And, we went through probably 5 to 10 organizations through conversations. We also talked to TechSoup. TechSoup is where we got our nonprofit pricing in the first place. They have a lot of vendors there that we've talked to. But I think, where the rubber hits the road is really in those interpersonal discussions, whether that be with a board member present who might specialize in technology, or from a commission, or from the vestry, and just kind of interviewing these organizations and talking about your environment and what changes might they recommend. You can pretty well tell what kind of person you're working for. And then when you've narrowed it down to a few vendors, definitely always checking references. It's a standard practice, but it's the easiest one to ignore in my experience. And that's a really important moment, because these vendors may be able to talk a really good story about changing your technology landscape, but if they haven't done it for other organizations similar to yours, that's always a concern.
There's a very common perception that a partner has to be local too, and fortunately these days that's not the case. So you've got a lot more to choose from than you realize. Do those searches, use those resources that Zachary described. I'm sure Zachary would be happy to visit with you. I most certainly would be happy to offer you any assistance that I could, even when you're comparing vendors. Happy to help any way that we can. So.
And I would agree on all fronts, guys. Just take your time, really, investigate, do your research on the reviews, talk to other, you'll even get, some that have testimonials from their customers, and you can reach out to those people that put the testimonials on their, website or wherever you're searching, and you'll get a lot of good feedback and recommendations on those providers, those partners. And, just to finish off this slide that's on the screen right now is, all devices controlled equally. You want to get as even a baseline in your environment as humanly possible. We know that not every machine or everybody's access can be the same, but the more you can get to that even baseline, that equal plane for everybody across the environment, the better off you're going to be. And then work from anywhere. Really, when you move to a cloud technology, it allows you guys to work from anywhere at any time, as long as you have that internet connection available to you, which in a lot of cases, helps the business stay up and running, and the collaboration and communication stay on pace at all times. Zach, I think we had another question pop in.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of really good questions. Continue to keep those coming. Really quick, to go back to a question that somebody stressed here. They already have the single pane of glass Windows 365 environment. Their curiosity is whether or not they still need sort of a technology partner. And I think that's really contextual, quite honestly. I'm always suggesting that because my personal expertise isn't in this field. But if you have those resources at your disposal locally, as in, somebody from your vestry works in IT and is happy to help you doing that, then you have to judge for yourself what works best for your organization. I would caution against trying to do it all in-house, because it is hard to find in one person somebody who can understand your network landscape, who can understand the security vulnerability piece, who can understand architecture of your server environment or whatever other audiovisual, for instance, technologies you might have. So I think it's really contextual. It's probably always a good idea to have somebody in your Rolodex or on speed dial who can address questions related to that single pane of glass. So I hope that kind of answers that question. Aaron Sample asked a question related to closed captioning. I'm going to say we'll push that question towards the end, but that is the sort of thing that we end up discussing in our SEEP administrators conversation group. And I would love to bring that forward to the next call. So Aaron, if you want to send me an email or contact Joe at SEEP and he'll forward it to me, I would love to put that on the agenda for our next discussion.
And another thing, to expand on what Zach had said for the single pane of glass and having somebody in your vestry, that can help, or however you guys, do so. Even here at Moonshot, there's so much involved in these technologies that not one person can be an expert on everything, which Zach was personally experienced that. My teammate is the SharePoint and O365 expert. So he handled that portion of St. Andrews, file move from the file server out to SharePoint. And then from the Intune side, that's my expertise, my area that I work with. So Zach and I worked on that piece for St. Andrews from that perspective. So even within Moonshot or a technology partner, you're going to most likely work with multiple people within that organization, but you are going to get that in-depth expertise on each one of those areas that you guys utilize in your environments. And that's one of the biggest benefits of working with a technology partner, is this is what we do every day, all day, and what we excel in, what we are experts in these technology stacks. And whether it's Google or whatever you're using, find that partner that has that, that knowledge on the back end, all the, these people that are expert level in the technologies that you use. That is the absolute biggest benefit of a technology partner.
Just to piggyback on that really quick, I think there's a distinction that's really important there. There are organizations that are small and are kind of a one-man show, one-person show is probably a better way to put that, where you're still relying on that one person to solve all of your problems. If you're looking for a technology partner, I would encourage you to find one that complements the inherent strengths of your organizations and maybe fills in some of those gap areas. I am not a Microsoft Teams person. I just don't have the expertise there, but I know that Moonshot has somebody on staff who can complement the skill sets that I have in maybe training the staff to use a tool. And it's really great to have one organization. I can call Tom and he can set me up with whoever does that at Moonshot. That's a really important factor. And I'm not saying you have to use Moonshot. We obviously are fans, but whoever ends up filling that gap for you, make sure that the people that they have on staff complement your inherent abilities and tech knowledge, so to speak.
I would agree, Zach, 100%. You know, it's definitely find that person that you're comfortable working with and works with you as well as you work with them. And it should be a transparent communication, and you should learn throughout all of your conversations or your engagements with them. And if you're not happy with the you know, search for another one that will give you that comfort level that you're expecting. To move into this next slide, you know, Teams and SharePoint is a huge topic right now because of us all having to work remote and because of the, you know, the environment that we're in the world today. Teams and SharePoint offer a ton of beneficial features from a collaboration and communication standpoint, as well as security on the back end. You know, there's redundant file storage that you can set up policies around to keep your data backed up for, you know, by default it's set at 90 days, but you can extend that out to 7 years if you choose. And when you work with a technology partner, they can help you set up those policies to keep that data secure and intact and backed up. You know, security and policies are always huge. Again, it's the baseline which you should base everything from. And Teams and SharePoint just make it that much easier to collaborate and communicate within yourselves and as well with customers outside of your organization. And you can wrap security around all of those communications and documents and everything from a Teams and SharePoint stance, whether it be internal or external. It's just a huge product that has made significant improvements over the last year with everything that we experienced with COVID throughout the world. Intune and Autopilot. This is something that we're finishing up implementing at St. Andrews. And what these products allow is the security of those devices that you guys use every day to access the data and the environment that you guys have set up. And the management of those devices and applications. We can also load up any of the applications that you guys use into Intune and have them, you know, in the case of St. Andrews where they had to rebuild all their machines. Zach, how long would you say it took you to rebuild one of those machines before we got involved?
It would be hard for me to say one machine because everyone had unique sort of situational things, but I can tell you it took over a week to get the computers themselves back online, and then, you know, several months to get everything kind of working as it was before again.
Correct. And one of the major pieces that Intune and Autopilot in particular help with is in those disaster, you know, recovery cases or in the instance of an attack, with the click of a button, as long as that machine is able to communicate with the internet, Zach can reimage a machine now in about 15 to 20 minutes. He clicks a button on the back end on his side in the admin portal, and the machine on the other end, as long as I said it's powered on and communicating with the internet, within 5 minutes it gets the signal and starts to rebuild itself. We load. I think
there's a really, so I have to jump in here because this is a really slick thing, and I want to paint a picture here. So you've given a great technical explanation of this, but just to really, you know, paint a picture here, when you bring a new staff person on, you can literally, instead of having to install all of the software packages that they're going to use, you pretty much put a thumb drive in the computer and it just loads up. And it has everything that they need already ready to go. If someone gets a virus or something has been compromised with their computer or somebody has stolen a device, remotely you can do the same thing. So, I mean, this is a really important thing as we become more reliant on these technologies. It makes the management day to day that much easier to do. It doesn't take over your day. It's almost an afterthought. So I have to jump in to just highlight how important that is.
Yeah, and again, you know, we take those applications that you use and load them up into the portal, the Intune portal, so that way you build these different groups of you know, the way that you guys design these machines and how the different portions of your organization use these machines, and we can create groups and different profiles and things like that. I'm trying not to get too deep in the weeds, but I love this product. It eases that management of the devices and you know, not only from the disaster standpoint, but like Zach said, when you bring somebody new in, typically it takes a couple days to get things ready. But with this setup, if you put the identity in the correct group and the machine you have ready and in the correct group, you click a button and in 20 minutes you have everything set up and ready to go for that user. So the management is just hugely improved by using a solution such as Intune. And there's others out there, third party. IBM creates a great product, MAS 360. There's another couple for mobile that work really well. But Intune, like I said, we're Microsoft partners. This is what we specialize in, and it works extremely well for the management and upkeep of the devices in your organization.
And is included in some of the bundles that we were talking about earlier.
Correct. So that was what we had for the slide deck. You know, we want to open it up now for any more questions that may be out there. Again, the more questions you guys ask and we can answer for you, the better off this session will be for you.
While we're waiting for those questions to come in, I want to touch on a couple of quick things. So, fire hose of information, right? I'm going to condense maybe a couple of ideas while we're waiting for those questions to come in. So what you do after this webinar is really dependent on kind of where you are in the process for your organization. Do you still have on-premises servers? Are you still the administrator that is taking care of everything? Are you the one that has to, you know, be the IT help desk in addition to whatever other responsibilities you might have for the church? If you're at that point in the process, then maybe finding a technology partner is the place where you are. If you already have a technology partner or have already transitioned to a cloud-based file system, maybe there are some other tools, or maybe there are some tools that you're using that are redundant and you're already paying for a license. Those are some of the things that you would want to discuss with that technology partner. And then, you know, St. Andrews is almost done transitioning off-site with our server and our files. We're really excited about some of those further down the road options that are now presented to us. We can automate so many different processes and reporting things to increase our standard of care for our parishioners. And that really ties it back to the mission of the church, right? So, you know, we talked a lot of technology here, but what does it really mean? When somebody fills out a membership application, you can automate the process of that file going to all of the people that it needs to go to, and maybe putting them automatically onto an email list or whatever the case may be. Those welcome materials can automatically be sent to them. Things like that. Automation is a really exciting thing that we're considering in the future to streamline some of our processes and increase our standard of care. Another piece of that is the telephony side. We just before COVID, thank God, had invested in a voice over IP system that allowed us to have business continuity when no one was in the building. And I know that's something that a lot of other churches are struggling with. If you haven't already done that, you know, the Microsoft products that allow you to continue to answer your phone, golly gee, because people don't stop calling, that's a really important piece. So I would encourage you to just kind of take it one bite at a time. I am certainly not a technology wizard here at St. Andrews, and I'm really thankful for partners who have helped us to guide that process and communicate to our board and vestry and commissions, so that I'm not the one having to kind of sell the idea that we should be headed that direction. It's exciting to think about how technology can help us do our missions. And I encourage you to just take that first step, whether it's finding a partner or thinking about some of those higher end automation processes.
I would, you know, agree on all fronts there, Zach. And you know, when we talked and covered a couple of the bullet points throughout the slides of workflows, that's really where you guys can get into that automation of bringing new people in, like Zach said, and making sure that everything is secure. You know, with a click of a button, you can do 5 different tasks if you set it up properly in your environment. And that's something that a good technology partner should investigate with you, how you're doing your business processes, what those are, and what tools and workflows can be put in place to help you be more efficient with the tools you use.
As everyone can see, we're really excited about at least the opportunity that we've been given to offer these products out there. our clients are just floored. The reason it's so much fun is because we're not asking them to buy a new product. All they have to do is configure what they already have. And so, you know, the purpose of this session truly is to educate you all. And it's not a solicitation, but if there's anything that we can do, feel free to reach out to Zach. I'm sure he'll be honest with you. But I'm also happy to talk with you. A lot of questions on how to identify a good partner in that. That's something that I feel passionate about. And so if I personally can help you with that conversation, I'm more than happy to visit with you.
Absolutely. At this time, it looks like our questions bank has been exhausted. So I want to thank everyone who has joined us for this webinar. I want to thank Earl, Josh, and Tom for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us today. And of course, to the SEEP Network for hosting this and continuing to share information. If you get a chance, please join us for the consortium's annual conference or sign up to be a part of our administrator conversation group. And we hope to see you at the pre-conference next month.